It's a pleasure talking to you, addressing to all of you once again. But before I continue, may I ask a question of Dr. Varsha Gupta? You have given a very detailed account of the distortion caused by the historians from Lahore and the colonial historians. It would have been greatly helpful to laymen also if we knew how we had some sources, credible sources, to bring out the history of the early Dogra rulers, and yet their work was systematically demolished and rejected by these very colonial historians. So before I begin, Brigadier Dhiman, I'm interjecting earlier for Varsha Gupta to answer this.
Okay, sir, all right. Ma'am, please go ahead.
Sir, could you please repeat your question? Actually, there is some problem in my...
Okay, I'll repeat. You have given a detailed account that yes, I understand very well. Yes, we would like to know that why some of the evidences, the written work which is available to us regarding the early Jammu rulers is ignored, and what are the arguments in demolishing that evidence which we have before us? How the colonial historians distort or just dismiss whatever is written either by this Gulab Nama or Raj Darshini or some other evidences.
Sir, actually, I have already explained it because British, they had some strategic interest in this region. So it was the main reason why they dismissed all the writings which were written about the Maharajas.
So would you, Dr. Gupta, say that the later day Indian historians also, they have blindly followed whatever yes. was said?
Yes, they have.
By the colonial historians?
Yes, they have blindly followed, and I don't think many of them have even consulted the Gulab Nama. Except Panikkar.
Thank you very much. I'll take up from here Brigadier Dhiman. She added with Sardar K.M. Panikkar's reference. The first is Gulab Nama, and the second is Sardar Panikkar, the founder of Kashmir. It's a biographical account of Gulab Singh's achievements and how he succeeded in creating this state. And he dismisses both of them with a single word, that these works are hagiographical works, biographical accounts which carry undue admiration, unfortunate. And coming back to the period of Maharaja Ranbir Singh, or rather even earlier, Gulab Singh, I would like to add that Gulab Singh is the founder of Jammu and Kashmir state. But Maharaja Ranbir Singh is a real consolidator of that kingdom. And not enough praise has been showered upon Maharaja Ranbir Singh. Historians need to correct this. Look at his achievements. Look how he consolidated. By the time Maharaja Gulab Singh died, the whole of this kingdom had not come under full command and control of the Dogra rulers. It was his exertions which established the rule of law of the state amongst all its citizens. So in that field, historians, it's incumbent upon historians today to go into all those details and find out. You may dismiss that Ranbir Code or some of the things, they were just taken up from where the British had left, picked them up and implemented them, changed their name here and there. But then after 1947, when India became a republic, we also did not change the Indian Penal Code. Our penal code continued to be the legacy of the British. So that criticism doesn't hold water. If there is something good in the particular context, then it must be carried forward. There is no harm in it. Then Maharaja Pratap Singh, even he is vilified. He is vilified to the extent, of course, one of the flaws during his reign was in fact not his doing. During the last years of his life, the hard campaigns that Maharaja Ranbir Singh had taken, they had taken toll over his body. He was weak. And therefore, a few mistakes did occur. As a result of those mistakes, in 1877-78, one of the worst famines in recent history that occurred in Kashmir. And the British took advantage of that. And they entered onto the scene. They got a toehold because of that happening. Now, that was a twilight period. Ranbir Singh was dying. Maharaja Pratap Singh knew that he had very difficult challenges in the form of the British. So we keep forgetting one thing, that the history of J&K depends upon the whims and the policies of the British politicians sitting in the Westminster area. The Parliament of England, during the whole of the second half of the 19th century, it oscillated between Disraeli and Gladstone. Disraeli was a conservative prime minister, an expansionist, a colonialist, an imperialist. And he was fully supported by Queen Victoria. Gladstone, on the other hand, he was liberal. He had no desire to extend the boundaries of the empire that was already there with them. So whenever Gladstone would be the Prime Minister of England, Jammu and Kashmir had some easy breathing space. But whenever Disraeli was the Prime Minister, there were always conspiracies, there were always people and policymakers within the bureaucracy and the army who were pushing for the forward policy. That the Britishers need to extend their boundary right up to Afghanistan in order to contain the onward march of the Russians. Now we forget that one of the defining moments of Northwestern region was 1843, when the Britishers were hounded out of going into Kabul. Number two, the destruction of the British army brought reprisals from the British upon the Afghans. And the fallout of that policy, we are still witnessing today. And India is an unwitting recipient of the fallout of whatever happens in Afghanistan. These facts of history, they need to be corrected to hammer the point down to the imperialists, the neo-imperialists also, the imperialists of today, that you cannot go into other people's territories and then impose your will upon them. This also brings me to the fact that Dogra rulers have often been accused of being cruel, of exploiting their own people. But let me say in defense that I am not going to judge the Dogra rulers of that era by the standards of today. I will judge them by the standards of the 19th century. And what were the standards of 19th century? The standards of 19th century were, which we saw in 1857 in India, when the Indians wanted the Britishers to leave them, how the Indians were hanged, blown up against the guns, killed, their families hounded. Thousands of people were, even civilians, were murdered by the British. They wanted to teach a lesson to Indians. In Peshawar, post First World War, the Kissa Khwani Bazaar, the street of the storytellers, it was bowed down. No one was allowed to enter that street. And the British Army came, they picked up the bodies, disposed the bodies, and washed the streets as if nothing had happened. So that was the moral culpability, moral bankruptcy of the colonials. They have no business in lecturing anybody else. Serfdom, as Varsha has already explained, that had a limited purpose. And at the end of the day, it was the Dogra rulers who ended the Bigar system. This policy of the British, the struggle between two opposite forces of moving forward or leaving the natives to their own fate, that continued even in the 20th century, particularly after the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. So once again, the British, they raised that phantom that the Soviets, they would march down to India from these northern frontiers. And therefore, once again, they wanted to control Kashmir, Gilgit, Baltistan in particular. The result was that right from day one, as Brigadier Dhiman has already explained, that how they thought that Maharaja Hari Singh would be amenable to their influences because of his Western education, but it didn't happen. So the result was the conspiracy began then. The conspiracy that began then has continued. So-called the Kashmiri uprising of 1931 was a conspiracy, was inspired by the British, has now been proven. It was a fact. I have raised a question number of times that Abdul Qadir, who gave that inflammatory speech after the Jummah Namaz, who was he and where did he go? If he was a freedom fighter, why don't the Kashmiris know where he is, from where he came, and where he went afterwards? He came to Kashmir. He came to Kashmir as an attendant of a European, and after executing his conspiracy of raising the people against the rule, he vanished. That day is recalled by Kashmiris as the Martyrs' Day. But the question is, the main hero of that day was Abdul Qadir. Why don't they remember him? Why don't they tell the world who he was? Why don't they write biographies of the person who inspired the Kashmiris for the independence struggle? These questions have to be asked emphatically so that the misconceptions, they are removed. So why did this happen in 31? Because the Britishers wanted Gilgit. Now with these killings and the uprising, and then all of a sudden, the Kashmiri Muslims Dr. Allama Iqbal was the first president, and the Qadiana leader, he was a founder and financer. Qadiana leader from Qadian, which is still in our part of the Punjab. These two men, they played a leading role. The purpose was to exert pressure on the Maharaja, extract the concessions which the British wanted from him. And what were those concessions? Primarily, it was a one-point concession that Gilgit should be somehow handed over to the British. So for 5 years, this tug of war, this went on between Maharaja and the British. From 31 to 35, 36, the Glancy Commission report, in fact, by and large, it absolved the Maharaja of any culpability. And it was made very clear by Maharaja even before that the jobs will be given on the basis of merit. So meritocracy was the order. But effort should be made for greater integration of the Muslims, greater representation of the Muslims, not on the basis of reservation, but on the basis of equipping them to avail the new opportunities that were arising. And Colonel Bhagwan Singh, he has written a book, The Conspiracies of Kashmir. In the appendix, he has given details of a number of things, including year-wise increase of the students from Muslim community in Srinagar College and Jammu College. Maharaja Pratap College and Prince of Wales at that point of time, it was Prince of Wales College. And there is a gradual increase. With that increase, there is a rapid increase in the number of scholarships which the Maharaja extended to the Muslims, so that they educate themselves, so that they become well equipped to occupy jobs on their own merit. Finally, the pressure was so great because the Muslims were continuing to send delegations from Lahore to pressurize Maharaja. In fact, to foment trouble. And finally, Maharaja knew that it was not possible for him to withstand any further pressure. It is then that the Gilgit agency was given away to the British on lease. After this, no trouble took place. The Punjab Jathas of Muslims which were coming to the state, they also suddenly stopped. They were not entering the state after that. So obviously we know what was the purpose of those Jathas, that agitation. The purpose was to serve the interest of the British. These things too need to be brought up in greater clarity and with greater emphasis. It is very significant that after 1936 till the end of the Second World War, there was no trouble in Kashmir. There is no problem in Kashmir. In 1939, Maharaja implemented, in fact, he was working on the process of evolution of power to the people. He gave a new constitution in 1939. And the powers of the prime minister or the king under that constitution, they continued to be exercised by Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah right up to the time till he was dismissed. These are little known facts. Some people accuse, many historians accuse Dr. Karan Singh of having no authority to dismiss Sheikh Abdullah. They forget that Karan Singh was acting under the powers which were given to him by the 1939 Constitution. The same Constitution under which Prime Minister Sheikh Abdullah was exercising his powers. So there was nothing illegal. The first thing that Sheikh Abdullah should have done was, when the Constituent Assembly was convened, was to, in a greater hurry, to formulate all the articles of the Constitution. He did not do that. His first act was to abolish monarchy. His second act was that the head of the state should be an elected person. And his third act was the implementation of the land reforms. And after that, at a snail's pace, the Constituent Assembly continued to talk about various changes that needed to be brought. The result was that there was a lopsided exercise of power during all these years. So as I said earlier, that from 36 to 45, there is no trouble in the state. And that should be remembered, it should be noted. But no sooner had the Second World War come to an end, and Maharaja Hari Singh returned after attending the war cabinet meeting. He was given a rousing welcome in Srinagar. And as his shikara approached the place near this office building of National Conference, Sheikh Abdullah and his friends, they were waiting there to give him a memorandum. That memorandum contained Naya Kashmir, which in fact he himself did not adhere to what he had demanded of the Maharaja. It was then that the trouble again began. And remember, it is the same time when the Britishers knew that they have to leave India now. So as the Britishers realized that they were about to leave, they have to leave, the clock is ticking, they once again stoked flames in the valley. Once again, they used their man in the valley, Sheikh Abdullah, to instigate him to launch the Quit Kashmir movement. So both these things, they have to be seen together. In 1931, suddenly trouble erupts. And the trouble subsides completely as soon as Gilgit agency is given to the British. From 36 to 45, 44, everything is quiet in the valley. And the moment Britishers realize that they have to leave, they again use their man, Sheikh Abdullah, and he launches the Quit Kashmir movement, thereby creating such a deep division between Jammu and Kashmir that even today its echoes are felt by all of us. That is a scar. On my mind also, I feel even today, though I haven't seen that, I haven't even seen what that feudal system was. But when I read it, I realize that it was a humiliating experience for someone to tell us to quit Kashmir. The people who had created that state, we forget that the title of Maharaja Hari Singh and others before him was Maharaja Raj, Jammu and Kashmir Naresh, Tatha Tibbatadhipati. We forget Tibbatadhipati, and Tibbat, let me remind you, let me inform you that Tibbat is a generic word which is used both for the mainland Tibet, Ladakh, and Gilgit also. So Tibbatadhipati, all the regions which fall in this part of the Tibet. He was the ruler of those. And since the British were going, Pakistan was about to be created, they wanted those regions to fall into the hands of those people who could serve their interests. And knowing Nehru well, knowing Gandhi well, they knew that it wasn't possible to expect them to be serving the Western interests. They were very clear about this thing, that they would not get themselves involved in the affairs of these colonial legacy. The fact of the matter is, there is a lot to be done about the distortions of history. As Varsha began, that this distortion began right in 1846. No sooner had the ink dried of the Treaty of Amritsar and Jammu and Kashmir emerged as a separate kingdom, that a lobby in the British circle that started working for ousting the Dogra rulers. Not because they were Dogras, but because they wanted to have people who can be controlled by them. If we read the life history of Maharaja Gulab Singh or even Ranbir Singh, we realize one thing, that both of them did not trust the British. Maharaja Gulab Singh realized that British were too powerful, and without their support, it is not possible to continue to rule by entering into exhaustive reforms, both constitutional as well as economic. So let us hope that more people come up, younger lot comes up one day to look at it in a new light and be the guiding lights of the coming generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. It was a very exhaustive and a very, very scintillating talk. And I'm sure most of us have been delighted to listen to you. And as you said, that the distortion started right after, 1846 Treaty of Amritsar, when you use the word, when even the ink had not dried on the agreement, very rightly said so. And you also said that the echo of Jammu or Srinagar divisions are still being heard. I wouldn't say they are echoing, I would say they are thundering right now. And this is the time people in Jammu are taking cognizance of it in a very, very serious manner. And I'm sure they're going to take some cognitive action, a predetermined action to overcome it. And as you said, the purpose of today's talk, and you very well summed up that some younger lot from the Dogar Desh would come up and take up these issues.